Let's bring Paul Rieckhoff in on all of this, host of the Independent Americans podcast. He's also co-founder of American Veterans for Ukraine. I'll put the landmine issue aside for a moment, but as Kelly says, big picture, what's going on here with Biden on his way out? Seems to be trying to do all he can for Ukraine, and then you wonder what Trump does on his way in.
I think that's what he's doing. I think it's what he should do, is kind of drain the tank, get them everything that they possibly can in the next couple of months to try to allow them to press their advantage and gain whatever ground they can, with the eventuality that Trump may pull the plug, right? So it's kind of a race.
Could have done some of this earlier, right?
You know, Biden has been slow in responding to every request from Ukraine from the beginning. It's been this kind of crazy game of Mother May I, where they say, please give us F-16s, and he says, no, 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 and eventually gives them. Please give us ATACMS. He says, no, 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 and he eventually gives them. They've been asking for landmines for a long time, too. Ukraine is, I think, the most landmine country in the world, and these are defensive weapons. This is going to stop human waves, right, and large numbers of foot soldiers, which Russia has been throwing at the Ukrainian forces for a long time now, and could be augmented by North Korean troops, right? That's why they've got the North Korean assets being added, because they need bodies, right? Putin is throwing bodies at the Ukrainians, and this is a defensive measure, and I think a common sense measure to help Ukraine hold their lines.
Now, let me ask you the most important question of all before we get into any other details, is that what Putin said, I guess it was yesterday, about nukes. Do you think we're having a legitimate conversation about a threat of nuclear war? Because, I mean, technically what he said was, if Ukraine's doing basically what it's doing now, I could use my nukes. So how do you read that?
It's always a factor, right? But it's also something that Putin, I think, has used constantly to kind of wave around as a way to intimidate it. I mean, if he's going to do it, he's going to do it. He's kind of crazy, right? But the idea that he's going to do it now because they have landmines or because they have ATACMS is part of the game that I think Putin tries to play with the West to intimidate them. We've got to fight fire with fire here. And I think it's about time we kind of leveled the playing field and allowed Ukraine to have the same weapons that the Russians do without having their hands tied.
So it's interesting, because then we change presidents, right? President Trump comes in. General Wesley Clark was on the other day. I thought he made an interesting point, is that, you know, in a weird way, Biden might be giving Trump some negotiating leverage here. You know, these issues, he goes back to Putin and makes his point. I want to put up what the Russians were saying from Dmitry Peskov, the longtime spokesperson for Putin. He says the president, meaning Putin, has indeed repeatedly, or rather constantly, stated he's ready for contacts and for negotiations. And Putin, he says, has already said that some of the options of freezing this conflict will not work for us. So is there a negotiation to be had for Trump? And what do you think it looks like? As opposed to the criticism of Trump from Democrats to say, well, he's going to end the war by basically giving up or surrendering. But is there a negotiation?
I mean, Ukraine could have momentum by the time Trump gains office. But I think the question is, under what conditions? Yeah, Russia would love to negotiate right now and take parts of Ukraine. But will that require Ukraine to give up land in order to reach a peace deal? So I think Ukraine has been steady in saying they're open to negotiating a peace deal once the Russians leave Ukraine. I mean, it's got to be conditional. I think we have to imagine a situation where, you know, an enemy was holding Texas, and they said, yeah, we're happy to negotiate, but we're going to keep Texas. No, we would not be open to that until they left our land, and I think that's a reasonable position for Ukraine to be.
Yeah, it's a bit, whether they could do it or not without giving up any land, obviously, is the biggest question heading into this new administration. Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.